This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and 3 Counts.
Cover! We got a new world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and 3 Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and 3 Counts starts now.
What up, though? It is another Tuesday. This is Knockouts and 3 Counts, and I haven't managed to go postal yet. So we've got another episode for you, and we've got a hell of a debut as we've got the debut of BKFC's own Chris Lights Out Lytle, man. Appreciate the time.
Of course. Couldn't wait to be on here. It's going to be fun.
Hell yeah, man. It was good to see you this past weekend. I mean, J-Bone was with me. That's as good a place as any to start. We had quite the night watching past guests of the show, Sammy the Heat Worthington, get herself another W, and then Michigan's own Claressa Shields got herself a W as well. That was quite the experience. We ended up walking her out to the ring, man. What'd you think about Sunday, J-Bone?
Dude, what an experience for us. First of all, the city of Flint showed out, man. Props to everybody that dressed up nice. They had mink coats on, man. It was a big time event, dude. It was a good time. Everybody looked great. Everything was fun. The experience itself was great. Walking out to the ring in a venue like that with a crowd like that, it's unmatchable, as I could say. I could only imagine being an actual fighter doing something like that. Your blood has to just go crazy doing stuff like that, man. Great time. Enjoyed it.
Good time, man. Well, Chris, you were out there actually. Were you helping with Skylar's Corner, or was he somebody you knew from over there? How'd you end up at the fight?
You know what? He used to train in Indianapolis. He's been out in Vegas for the past 3 years. So I used to train with him a lot. You know, it's funny. My first bare knuckle fight, 2018, he was one of my number one sparring partners, which is weird because he's 6'7". The guy I fought was like 5'8". So not at all like, but like, yeah, I just need a body. So he was one of the guys I went with, like, going with a big, strong, tough guy with the big, long jab was always good.
All right, man, you got to tell me, dude, what were your thoughts about that fight, man? Because, man, I was at the press conference and all the stuff earlier in the week, and they were choking the shit out of each other at the press conference. It was like DC and John Jones almost knocked the whole damn backdrop over, knocked the mayor over. It was a good time.
Well, the press conference had some of the best stuff in it, I'd have to say, because the fight I wasn't liking it too much. You know, I don't want to comment too much about it because
understand. No worries. I had to ask because, like I said, when I saw you over there, because like I said, I've shout out to our guy Scott DePano, man. He's been talking to us about trying to set something up with you for a while. And I, it was funny. I turned around. I'm like, no shit. What are the chances he's over here? And then I remember when we got up to the press box, I literally looked at J-Bone and I go, well, no shit that he knows the guy. He's from Indianapolis. I didn't put two and two together. And I'm like, no shit. All right. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. There's always so many good fighters out of it, or so many big fighters out of Indianapolis. Like, we kind of all know each other. You know what I mean?
It's like that in Michigan too, dude. Everybody knows everybody. Like, I've been around MMA here since like 2006. So like I saw Miles Jury and Darren Cruikshank and Justin James and James Lee and all the guys that came out of here and went to the UFC to now the Young Bucks that they got up there. So I totally can relate. Well, that's as good a place as any to start, man. Like, I remember watching you back in your UFC days, and I seen your fights that you had when you went to bare knuckle and all that stuff. But now that you're on like the analyst side of things, man, what's the biggest change you think that you've seen in combat sports as it's evolved? Because I feel like even just in the time I've been there, what you see in both boxing and MMA, and now what we've got with BKFC, the way it's evolved has just been insane.
Yeah, I think the main thing, I mean, not only the evolution of the sport itself. When I first started, it was called NHB, like no holds barred. It wasn't even mixed martial arts. And now you'd fight a guy and you'd be like, what is he? Oh, he's a good kickboxer. This guy's a wrestler. This guy's a jiu-jitsu guy. Everything's everything now. Mixed martial art, truly. So, I mean, you have to be good at everything. You have to work on all your weaknesses. You don't have anybody who's not good at everything, really. So that sport has evolved in many ways. I also think the way it's perceived has changed. That's evolved because it used to be,
for sure.
these guys are nuts. So these guys are, the human cockfighting aspect, and these guys are just Neanderthals going out there and fighting. I feel like, getting on TV, The Ultimate Fighter was huge. That was a first big step to get mainstream acceptance. I remember the first time, probably 2010 to 2012. I can't remember which, but like sometime like watching ESPN, and I looked up, I was like, oh my God, do you see that little bottom of it said something about UFC. Like
Right.
we were never mentioned on there.
Like it wasn't
Are you
supposed
kidding
to be there.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So then it went from that, and then we're on ESPN and that was amazing to me. And then I really feel like another big level up was during COVID. I felt like Dane and them had the foresight when everybody's telling him, you can't do this, you got to shut down. And he goes, no, I'm doing it, and he made it happen. He got on there, and so many people who've never seen the sport was, well, there's nothing on, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
You got goofs like Mark Zuckerberg, who's like, this is the greatest sport in the world. He'd never watched it before, but then he said, man, I got to watch. This is amazing. Best athletes. Yeah. And you get a lot of people who are actually trained athletes who recognize that these are some of the best, are the hardest training fighters are athletes in the world, I would say. And so I think that has changed. Bare knuckle has changed quite a bit in the brief time it's been around, but you're getting people who are really understand the sport more, being more understand this is the sweeter of the sweet sciences. Like you cannot get hit, you have to be precise with your punches, work the body. I think people are getting much better. It's evolving very rapidly.
Yeah, you speak to the growth on bare knuckle side of it. I mean, I don't know if it's the tryouts or if it's what you guys are able to figure out in these athletes through those, or looking back through their records or whatever gym analysis you guys may be able to come upon, or whatever the case be. I don't know how you guys find the guys with the level of heart that these people are out there showcasing, man. I mean, you watch any event and it seems like they're not just chasing a paycheck. It's like they're truly chasing that victory out there. They're really not wanting to allow this fight to not go their way, whether they've been knocked down 3-4 times. I mean, you see this constant will to want to win. I don't know if it's like I mentioned through the tryouts or just the weeding out through the events or something, but you guys are doing an amazing job with that aspect for sure.
Man, I appreciate it. And that to me is my favorite aspect of bare knuckle. Is I bet every fight, every card we put on, we have at least one time where somebody will get knocked down, get up off the canvas to win. I know we've had it 4 times on one card before. Amazing. I was like, oh my God, that's true heart. And that's getting up off the canvas to win is my favorite thing to see. You see it all the time. And we'll have people, we had not too long ago, 4 knockdowns in the first round. Each guy had 2. It's like, dude, you never see that in any other combat sport.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see more knockdowns in one fight than a lot of times in a whole boxing card, So it's just, and that's exactly what it is. That's why I think people are going to gravitate towards this. It is that will to win, that thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, all encompassed in the one little fight. And you can have several knockdowns, and people, I mean, that's difficult to deal with. You get knocked down by another man, you have to get up and keep fighting. Not only that, to win. Unbelievable. So I absolutely love that aspect. You're 100% accurate with that. We try and learn that at the tryouts, but it's kind of hard because you can't really knock people down and be like, get up.
Yeah.
Here, take this overhand right.
Probably get arrested.
Also get your ass off the canvas. Yeah.
We also need you to bleed right in front of us.
Yeah, can you let's see how quick he kills. No, but we go to the tryouts and I try and see this. We try and look at toughness and just the way, like I have been in the tryouts and we do some sparring, and when people get hit and they look away, I'm like, he can't fight. He can't fight for us. Not that he's not a good fighter, but you can't fight for us. This is a different breed with different animals in there. And some of the best fighters in the world can't do this. And some of the toughest guys in the world are going to be fine. So it's just a different animal.
You spoke about some of the knockdowns, should I say, not knockouts, but what do you think it is that causes such the quick knockdowns like that? Is it just simply the bare knuckle? Is it more of like a flash impact? There's no cushion there to absorb any of the impact. Why do you think there's so many athletes that are able to get knocked down, but they don't seem to get that instant out effect? It's just more of like a flash.
Good question. Yes, you have a glove. Let's say a boxing glove. You get hit with this thing. pushes this whole part of the brain, and the brain will hit the skull, and then you're going to go down. Even MMA with a little glove, boom, you get that
Impact
brain
zone.
hitting the skull. A lot of times with bare knuckle, that counter coup type thing, you get hit with a bare knuckle, it's like boom, you get clipped, like oh geez, and you get knocked down. But it's not as much of the brain like racking up against the skull, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it might knock you down, knock your equilibrium down, but I think you're getting less concussed than a lot of boxing. I mean, man, I've had probably close to 100 fights, and I think I've had one real concussion. And that was in a boxing match. I mean, it was boxing. I love boxing. I had 15 pro boxing matches. By God, it's the worst thing for your brain. I mean, every one of my favorite boxers has brain damage. You know what I mean? There's not good old fighters who don't have brain damage unless they're just super slick and don't get hit much. And I don't even like those guys watching them usually because they're not that fun. So I like the Arturo Gattis and I like the guys who come to put it on, and there's gonna have problems down at their life. There's no way around it. I'm so glad when I signed my UFC contract 2006, they're like, no more boxing. I was like, I like boxing, but I like this a little bit more. So I'm glad that happened because I'd be that way. You wouldn't be talking to me right now. You'd be like, what are you talking about, Chris?
And you see it with so many people too, and it's not even like a shot. But I competed in boxing and jiu-jitsu and trained a bunch in MMA, but I never ended up fighting in MMA. But the thing with boxing is, you're right. Just the fact that you only have punches and stuff, it's like, when you really think about it, you do take so much more damage because you're getting hit a lot more. Not that you don't get hit in MMA, but you got a lot more weapons, which means it's a lot more, there's a lot more to move out of the way from, you know what I mean? Like you could change your level, duck, shoot a takedown. There's a million different ways with MMA because of the different facets to be able to get out of some of that stuff. But with that being said, how'd you find your way to bare knuckle? What was it about that, with what you already said with the boxing, that enticed you to be like, you know what, this is something I want to try before I get out of here?
Man, it's funny. I'd been retired from the UFC for like 6 years, and somebody came to the gym one morning like, hey, you're good buddies with Joe Riggs, right? I go, yeah. And he goes, well, look at this. He's doing a bare knuckle fight in England. I go, what the hell's wrong with Joe? You're like, why would he ever do a bare knuckle? Like, does he owe money to gangsters? What's happening? I was like, so I said, let me see that. So I watched it, and I remember like in the second round, I looked at him. I looked at my buddy. I was like, who do you think I talked to get to do one of these? And he was just like, you just talked about how stupid it was. And I was like, man, when I saw it, I was like, it reminded me of MMA back in 1998 when I started, when you could headbutt, when you could do anything. You know what I mean? I was like, it brought me that level of, oh my God, like if you off 1 inch, you're going to get knocked out, and you have to be precise with things. Like that level of intensity was up to here. And I was like, I didn't get that in MMA anymore. I didn't get that in boxing. So I was like, I've been retired, but like, if I don't do one of these fights, I'm not a real combative athlete. I have to do a fight. And so it took me about a year to finally get in get him to like get in contact with the people. I didn't even know who they were. So I finally found out who it was. I got over to England to do a fight, and it was amazing, and then they got a hold of me here and said, we're legalizing this in the States. I was like, man, get out of here. And they're like, yeah. I was like, I'm in. I want to do it. I'll do a couple fights. But by this time, I'm in like my mid 40s. I mean, I'm just mad at David Feldman's lazy ass for not doing this 5 years earlier. I told him that. I was like, I could have been a champion, Right. But no, he tried hard. He did whatever he could, and finally got it in 2018. But I mean, before that, they couldn't. But I mean, like, I'm in my mid 40s. By the time I had 3 fights in bare knuckle. And then I had wrist surgery, and I planned on having another fight, but it just never really got better. And I was always doing it in commentary by that point. So, I kind of talked about doing another fight, and like, oh yeah, you just have to take like a month off and train. I'm like, I ain't missing my commentary gig. I love this. So I called it a career, baby. I mean, I love doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that before we went live for just a brief second, but talk about a job, man. I mean, you guys went from kind of just being like in the couple commissions and stuff that would sanction you guys, is, you went in kind of this like, figure 8 order, or however you want to call it, to now you guys are such a broad company. You guys go all over, not only the States, but the different countries. I mean, talk about a gig. I mean, were you expecting anything like this, this soon into this job?
I mean, to be honest with you, yes. And just for 2 reasons. One, I mean, I love boxing, I love MMA, but to me, bare knuckle is by far the most entertaining of the three. When I mean, like I said, we had 9 fights the other day, or 10 fights, 9 knockouts. Action, action all the time. People getting laid out. Knucklemania was one of the most amazing cards I've been at. 5 and I think 10 knockouts out of 12 fights. Just amazing cards. So we never have anybody say, "Man, there was just too many knockouts last night. That was no fun." No, everybody loves the knockouts. So that in its short it's fast paced and it's short rounds. I think people love that. We put on 12 fights a night. Boom, and nobody does that. We keep it moving. We don't sit there and have a 20-minute discussion after each fight about. We keep the fights moving. I think people like that. I knew it would take off for that reason. But the other reason I think is, it's a combative sport. Nothing is quote unquote safe. But when I even first came out to have my first bare knuckle fight, I've been retired for 6 years. My family like, "You're not doing a bare knuckle fight." I said, "Yeah, I am," because training is when you get most of your injuries. I'm like, I had to learn to retrain. Like, I was an inside fighter in boxing. I had to learn head movement, how to not take punches. You can't block like this, how to get out of the way and stuff, be elusive. You don't take nearly as much damage in training or in the fight. So if you get hit, you're going to get cut. That's pretty much factual. So I just feel like for your brain, it's so much better than boxing, so much better than MMA. And I think after we explained this to commissions, I had to go talk to the ABC Doctors Committee once, and I explained why it was safer. And they're like, "Oh, that makes sense," because at first it just sounds way worse. Bare knuckle, you're crazy. You're going to get cut more. I give you that. I'll take scar tissue damage and little superficial wounds over brain damage any day.
Yeah. We heard kind of Eddie Alvarez. I know he unfortunately unsuccessfully, but he talked about it in his lead up to that Knucklemania main event. That's why he was so entertained with, and not only the thought of doing bare knuckle, but now returning to, is the fact that the training's just so much easier on his body. He's able to put in a training camp and not feel like he's worn out. He's able to go in there and put what he feels like is the best version of himself out there because of the fact that the training camp's not quite as intensive.
Bro, I would go into training camp and I'd hit the mitts for a minute, I'd jump rope, I'd go, in there and spar, I'd do a couple things, and they're like, "All right, we're done." I'm like, that's it. It's like so much easier. Like, no wrestling, no jujitsu. That stuff tears your body up. And it was just it's refreshing. Like, man, I could do this for another 5 years. It's so much easier on your body. And mentally, it's easier than that grind in MMA is real, my friends. That's tough.
Well, you talk about Knucklemania, man. One of my biggest things with that was crazy was like when you actually get to the event and you see how many people that you guys had there, number one, with hearing numbers and what it did as far as like fights in Philly. I was just in Philly last year for WrestleMania, and it was funny. I tweeted about it while I was watching the main event, because obviously, as you can tell from our intro, and shout out to everybody that's watching us on BODYSLAM.net, says you got about 300 people in here. Appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button. But with that said, it was funny when I was watching it, because the first thing I thought of, with us being wrestling guys too, was when Jeremy Stevens and Eddie were fighting. That Philly crowd, like, it's like renowned when it comes to wrestling, as far as they'll fucking let you have it.
Philly gets crazy.
Yeah. And then when you see that fight and them just out and out, you, Jeremy.
F you, Steve.
It was like, wow, dude, this crowd is hot.
Well, Jeremy brought that on himself at the press conference, talking about how Philly's always been number 2. They're not good at anything. I was like, "Hey, man, be careful what you're doing, brother. I love it, but there might be repercussions." But no, he passed for flying colors. He did a good job.
Yeah. Talk about a performance on his end, man. I know we're just kind of diving head deep into Knucklemania here, but for Jeremy Stevens to kind of be that underdog, kind of, not necessarily promotional wise, but it seemed like all the fans and stuff were really behind the whole Eddie story. It seemed like Jeremy was an afterthought. It was like he was there to just be beaten, essentially. And then for him to go out there, put on the performance that he did, really, that first round was both guys put on a good match, but then Jeremy Stevens really kind of figured him out, came the second round and just poured it on him. And it was, for him to have that type of performance, I feel like he raised his ceiling significantly, at least in a lot of fans' eyes, I would imagine.
Well, here's the thing that, you got to look at one thing involved with this, and that's motivation. But where's the motivation? I mean, Jeremy is still extremely hungry. He's never won a world title. This is his chance to win a world title. He knows it. He said, this is what I was built for, bare knuckle. I'm phenomenal at this. I got to get up to this level. Eddie Alvarez has won the title twice. He's won, in a couple major organizations. He's doing this for other reasons. So I think motivation-wise, Jimmy was on point. He knows what he's going for. He's still climbing that ladder. Once you reach the top, it's harder to keep that level, in my opinion. So I think that was probably the main difference right there.
Well, I got a question off of that. Like, we speak about Jeremy Stephens. I mean, I remember, so Miles Jury has been a training partner of mine for years. I remember Jeremy Stephens coming out here to fights at Royal Oak Music Theater to corner Miles back in the day. And to see where he's at now, like he said in the lead up, he said, I fought in the UFC, I fought in PFL, I fought in all the organizations there are to fight in. You being a guy that kind of came from the OG generation in a lot of ways when it comes to MMA with all the young bucks that are coming up. What do you think it is about guys like Jeremy Stephens, even guys like yourself, that he's able to have a longevity like that? Because him and Eddie Alvarez have been around forever. And for both of them guys to be two of the guys that are really putting it on for bare knuckle like that, after all the wars they've already had, do you think that that's got to do with like the way they came up, or do you think it's just the dog in them both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, no matter what, you have to have that. The way we talk about that, be a dog, you have to have something a little different. And there's some excellent fighters, some very good fighters who just don't have that. They're skilled, they're athletic, they're great athletes. You just have to have a different level of like mental toughness or something to be able to get hit and take it. Like I've been in a lot of fights, I've never been knocked out. I don't know why. Got a big, thick skull. Maybe like that Homer Simpson syndrome. Remember, he kept getting hit with like 2x4s. Didn't go down. Maybe that's me. I don't know. But it's just a different level of being able to get knocked down and saying, I say you have to be delusional to be a great fighter. Like, yeah, that didn't hurt me. I'm still going to lose a big fight and be like, I'm still the best in the world. You have to think like that to be like a dog and just go out there and keep fighting no matter what. You can be bleeding. It just does. Like, I don't care. There's just some kind of part of your genes, and it's like that. But also, the old school ways of fighting were different, man. I mean, you just took fights. We were talking about the other day. It's just, I remember going to a fight and being like, who am I fighting? What are the rules? Okay. And what weight class? Oh, okay. He's 10 pounds over, whatever. I mean, you just fought no matter what, and you just fought everybody. And I think that's kind of where they come from, that old school thing. They might have a lot of losses, but they just fought nothing. But it's just that mindset. I can fight anybody, anytime, anywhere, and win. And you combine that with just some great DNA and just a different level of, think a little bit different, being a dog. That's both. I knew there was going to be a great fight because both those guys have that. And like I said, it's not everybody who does it, but those are the people who excel at BKFC.
Yeah, you talk about the hunger and stuff. I think we've seen that a lot in that co-main event on that night as well. The Mick Terrell versus Ben Rothwell fight. I mean, that hunger that he was able to show in that one. I mean, for me personally, I've been a fan of bare knuckle for years. A long time subscriber to the point where I'm still at the $3.99 tier for all the OG fans. So,
my man.
Yeah. Don't that's a secret. Don't go sniffing out up
I'm
top.
telling Dave he gonna cancel
it. Yeah. But no, that being said, I was thinking we were gonna see Mick Terrell just go out there and outclass Big Ben. Honestly, I thought he was gonna be able to get his hands on him eventually, kind of slowly throughout the first round, figure him out, and then just kind of roll into him throughout the next four. That is not what we've seen, man. Big Ben was able to lay him out real quick. What was your thoughts on that fight, man?
I mean, first of all, you could just tell, like, same thing, motivation. Ben once is very bad. He hadn't been a world title holder. And the way Ben was cocking that right hand and leaning to his right, I could tell he's putting all the weight on that back foot. He was just waiting for the time he could unload and land that right hand. If he lands that right hand on anybody, right, he's probably knocking him out. You know what I mean? So he just waited. He was just waiting. And I just feel like he wasn't going to be denied that fight no matter what, And people don't understand how motivation can change everything. If people are in the right mindset, it's going to be hard to deal with it. And he was in the right mindset that time. And I mean, he's just such a big, powerful, strong guy. If he gets in the mindset, only thing, could have maybe moved around a lot and just tried to wear him out for a round or two and not engaged at all, but it's not his style, man. So you sit there and trade with Ben, reap the whirlwind, my friend.
Right, they're right.
Man, you hit the nail on the head with that too, because like with him getting that knockout like that, you could see like the emotion come out of him when he hit him. We just got done talking about OGs of the game. Like my coach fought Ben back in the day, back in the King of the Cage days, like Don Richard. But he talked about it too. It's like that guy, and we just had one of his star pupils on the show, Cody Lynn, who has been competing on Anthony Pettis' promotion a bunch. And it's like to see, again, we go back to that old school mentality thing. I mean, for guys like him, guys like Jeremy Stevens, guys like Eddie Alvarez to be getting the shot in there like that, you could see it when he hit Terrell because he just like screamed out as soon as he hit him. You know what I mean? And it's like you see the joy just in like him talking about it. It's like it's crazy to see some of these guys. It's like you said, even if it's in the latter stage of their career, the way that it's like reinvigorated so many guys. I mean, with that said, you being an MMA guy and getting to see so many of the other guys come over from boxing, what do you think's like the most effective background for that stuff? Like, do you think the MMA fighters have more of an advantage or the boxers, or do you think it kind of depends on who it is?
I think it depends on who it is. Like we talked about, you could be a very slick, very great boxer, like Austin Trout, and he's going to do well because he uses this as a sweet science, and he's learned how to make sure he's not, getting hit clean. So if you do that, that's going to be very effective. Or to me, you got some of these, just hardcore inside. Like I think you could have like a mid-range, not a mid-range, like a mid-tier, like a journeyman boxer. But if they're just tough as nails and they go in there and they scrap, they could be a really good bare knuckle fighter. That's why I think MMA guys have done so well. Every MMA fighter's got to be, not every one of them, but a majority are just hard-nosed, tough guys. You know what I mean? And that's what excels in bare knuckle. So where you do get that sometimes in boxing, it's the exception, not the norm. I think in boxing, it's the norm. So, in bare knuckle, in MMA, that's the norm. That's why, to me, if you look at our records so far, the MMA guys have really done well. It's going to take a special guy like Austin Trout or just an absolute journeyman dog who's in there in boxing to make him like a champ, I think.
Perfect example of that I can think of, who's a past guest of the show, actually happens to be one of Michigan's own. I've seen him fight in MMA a bunch before he came over to BKFC, but he's done well over there, is Esteban the Mohawk Rodriguez, man. Like I've watched him fight for years, man.
Love that dude.
And then seen him go over there to bare knuckle and just the energy that guy's got. And, to see him in there, dude, like he, to me, is the perfect example of that. I saw him fight so many times in MMA, and then it's like he got in bare knuckle and it was like he found his sport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I love watching that guy fight, and I love his energy, dude. I love how every time he's there, he's smiling, he's positive, he's all ready to go. I'm like, this is the guy we need to focus on. We got to make this guy a star. And he's gotten so much better as a fighter, a bare knuckle fighter. Had some medical issues, but we've talked to him. He's getting everything cleared up, and he's gonna be back ready to go here soon. But man, I love everything about what he's doing. He, like I said, I got him in my short list of people. I said we got to focus on this guy because he has that it factor that you can't recreate or you can't manufacture. He just has it. So I love watching that guy, and I love his energy.
And that's a hell of a compliment, man.
High level energy dude right there, man.
Yeah,
you're not kidding. Even when we're just at normal fights, like he walks in and like, I need some of what that guy has before we go in the fights. Like before I get on commentary, give me some of what he's drinking, just so I like. If I had half of that, dude, I would be like a cracked out Joe Rogan, dude. Like,
I love it.
Lord. Well, Kyle, you said you got. Go ahead, Corey.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Kyle just brought up the fact of the commentary, right? All three of us now have done our little fair share of commentary. As somebody who, on your end, being the fighter who's transitioned into commentary now, what's your thoughts on that whole world? It's obviously like it's a little more difficult, I think, than most people would realize, but at the same point, it really is just kind of having a solid conversation about what you're seeing while also adding informative stuff that kind of keeps the crowd tuned into the fight. I mean, what's your thoughts on what's your style of commentary? What do you think you bring into the commentary realm, and what have you learned throughout the couple of years now that you've been doing it?
Well, I was given some good advice by my commentary partner Sean Willock. He's like, "Look, Chris, you've been fighting since 1998. You have a lot of experience fighting, but you've also been a corner man, right?" I go, "Yeah, a bunch." He's like, "Well, pretend you're a corner man here, except for one person, you're giving it to both guys. And instead of waiting until the end of the round, you just do it in the middle of the fight." And I was like, "Okay." So that's how I do it. I'm watching. I'm like, I love this jab he's throwing right here. It keeps landing. He needs to throw more of those jabs. I'm like, man, I don't like the way he's throwing that uppercut. He's going to get caught. His chin's up too high. So I'm trying to pretend I'm coaching both guys, and I think that's what I'm trying to do, and explain why this thing's working to people sometimes. Like that overhand right's not going to land because he's not stepping forward. He's still in the overhand right, but he's not. He's got to take a little step before he gets in because he's out of reach. I just try and do like you talked about and explain a little bit, but at the same time corner those fighters even though they're not hearing me. So that's my style of trying to get the fans to understand what's going on and why.
Is that something you always wanted to do, or was it something that just kind of like fell in your lap?
Well, I've done it, off and on with smaller shows for years, and I always thought it was fun. I was like, this is cool, just kind of being at the fights and being involved, but not necessarily doing it. But I was like, this is entertaining, man. I enjoy this. It made me think about fighting from a different point of view. How to break it down, how to talk about it, and but just like I said, unfortunately, when the sport came to be, I was already in my mid 40s, so it's like I knew I had a limited window. I was like, I've been doing some kind of combative sport since 1998. I've developed a lot of knowledge in my head, and it's useless. It's a waste of knowledge if I don't do something with it. So I can either coach or I can do commentary, and I've done coaching. I like the commentary now.
There you go.
I like that example though you gave. That sorry to interrupt, Kyle,
You're straight.
I really like that example you gave though. Coach both fighters. I'm going to try to use that myself, being semi-active commentator myself, but I really like that example. That is essentially, now when I think about it, that is mostly what you hear when you're listening to quality commentators. Is they are just basically breaking down, like you said, what could land, what like you said, essentially coaching both fighters, as in what's open, what's not. Good strategy is basically what I was saying.
Thank you. I think it makes a lot of sense. That's why they want to hear from me. They want to hear why, what should be being done, and why. Sean Willock always says, he's the who and the what, I'm the how and the why. Like, he's a right hand thrown by this, good uppercut hook. I'm like, yeah, that worked because he stepped in, or he needs to throw more of these. I'm the how and the why.
Yeah, dude. Like I said, it's cool to see that stuff. And Corey and I talked about it a little bit. I've gotten to do MMA and do some Muay Thai stuff. So it's always crazy with the different sports, how they all can be so different on commentary. For you, in your time in commentary with BKFC, what do you feel like your the craziest fight or craziest moment you had at the commentary table?
Man, there's so many with this sport. Like I said, is at the time when somebody got knocked down 3 times in the first round and then knocked his opponent out in the second round. I don't know. The thing that just jumped out my head at me right there was at one of our huge fights where Mike Richmond is just pummeling Lorenzo Hunt. Knocks him down. They about stop it. Lorenzo Hunt has one chance, and he threw like a Hail Mary right hand and knocked Richmond flat out. That was the biggest turnaround I've ever seen in a fight. Like, man, nobody, and that whole card was amazing. And when you have an amazing card, and then it's like, the punctuation mark right at the end when the knockout like that happened, that was one of our best cards ever because of great night of fights. And then the main event was absolutely insane, and it ended like that. That was a crazy fight.
Yeah, I can remember the feeling I had during that exact moment. I mean, I'm a big fan of both guys. I like what Lorenzo Hunt brings to it with his gimmick and his cockiness that he has going.
He would fit good in the wrestling side of the show.
He does. He does seem like a professional wrestler just as much as a badass fighter. but I'm also a huge fan of the Marine, Mike Richmond, and I was hoping so bad that was going to be his night. To your point, he looked like he was on one. He was landing everything it looked like he was throwing. Then all of a sudden, it was just game over. And I just remember that feeling of just the sink. And to your point, the whole card was amazing to that point. It still was, because it was still such an amazing, but for a fan's perspective, I was just like, that was one of the first times too. And it speaks to what I've heard Dave Feldman talk about a couple times with like the homegrown talent. I know Mike Richmond's had a elusive MMA career and stuff like that, but for the most part, at least in the recent years, he's known more for his BKFC run. And to have a fan essentially like myself feel that type of feeling for your guys' athletes, it shows the growth of the organization as a whole, essentially. And I mean, just to see that there's guys like that, like I say, people are starting to really build a fanship with through just their bare knuckle career. It's got to mean a lot to somebody like yourself, as deep in the sport as you are.
Man, it just like I said, as soon as I saw it, I fell in love with it. And I'm in a unique spot because I was fortunate enough to be there when the UFC blew up to what it was, blew up to what it is. The growth in the early days when nobody liked it and thinking you were an idiot and a savage for doing it, and then to see it grow into like, oh, these are the best athletes in the world. That was cool. And now I feel like I got a second opportunity to do it. Who gets that? Who gets to do something like that twice? A new sport emerging, such a rarity, man. And I'm just in the perfect spot to be helping guide both those sports, or not really guide. I'm trying to help guide this one because I learned from what I learned from the MMA, and so I feel like I'm in a good, unique spot, and I'm just lucky, and I'm happy to be here.
Another thing that I feel like BKFC's done real well, as opposed to obviously, like you said, the UFC is the UFC. So obviously, like, they're the big dog when it comes to promotions and things. But like, one thing that I particularly have enjoyed, and obviously maybe we might be a little biased because they're both past guests of the show, but like the women that you guys have found to fight, man, we just saw Beck Rawlings and Taylor Starling. You've got both Christine Faria and Britton Hart, who are both past guests of the show. Like, what are your thoughts on that? I feel like pound for pound, as far as like female fighters and stuff, BKFC's got some of the most badass females that I've seen fight too, because they all get in there and scrap. Agreed. And then one of the most shocking things, I mean, you guys, and then you bring in people like Paige Van Zandt. Who'd ever thought Rachel Ostovich would have gotten thrown down bare knuckle?
Man, I mean, first of all, it's just amazing how tough those girls are. And like, you talk about being dogs, some of those girls are getting teeth knocked out and just, pummeled, and they don't care. They just keep coming forward. I'm like, Bret Hart, you're not going to get a tougher girl than that. And Faria, she's scary. But it's just amazing to me how I'll see it. And I'm like, in addition to that, these girls are attractive. like, what is going on here? Like,
such pretty faces to get
I'm like,
punched, man.
Geez, they have it all. It's just amazing that, like, we've had guys who will quit sometimes. And these girls are they got a different level of toughness, man. That's why I say it's some kind of a genetic thing, maybe 1 out of 1,000. I don't know what it is, but some people have it and some don't. And I feel bad. You might want to be this, you might want to be that, but if you don't have it in you, bro, I don't know what to tell you. I'd love to just say it's your mindset. I don't think it is. It's just something different about some people, and a lot of our girls have it, and they're savages, and they'll go out there and battle to the death, I think. I mean, we'll never let that happen, but I mean, they're out there bleeding, and like they want to keep going. Like, you have to stop. And then, no, it's like, oh Jesus.
Dude, Taylor Starling was the perfect example of that in that fight with Beck Rawlings, because man, she got banged up, but was in there the whole time, like right in the pocket. It wasn't like nobody running around, just didn't give a shit.
And well,
even like when there was like 30 seconds left, she's still trying to knock her out. I'm like, you're losing this fight, but damn, she came to fight. She was going the entire time. I loved it.
That was the exact point I was going to make. It was even arguable that she won that 5th round because of the heart that she was able to show. That was what impressed me the most. I mean, it's one thing to be able to stand in there and take a beating, but to truly listen to what your coach has to say, hear the fact that you're down, and try your damnedest in that 5th round. That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother layer to it.
Bro, that's what we've been talking about this whole time earlier with this. Is like, I don't think you see, it's hard to see as much heart in other sports as it is in this. I mean, you just see, you can't really see that in football. Basketball, no, you just don't get the glimpse. It's just pure heart, man. And it's visible when you see somebody getting hit in the face and they're bleeding everywhere. You see somebody getting knocked down and they're getting up and they're bleeding, like, be done. Like, nope. Damn. That's just a different level of mental toughness and heart, and we got that more than anybody in the world.
It's hard to argue, man, and it's cool to watch, because it's cool, like, as a whole, that like women's fighting, I feel like, is finally starting, whether that's boxing, MMA, bare knuckle. I feel like finally we're starting to get at some sort of a point where like people are getting like more conditioned to it and see it in the same light as they do the men. Because like, we talked about it at the top of the show, but we were all there at the Claressa Shields fight. For a women's fight, even though obviously it was in Flint, which I'm sure helped, but for a women's fight to be main eventing a pay-per-view like that, BKFC has done that how many times? Like, it's a cool thing to see. Did you stay around and watch that fight on Sunday?
I watched a little bit of it. I didn't stay for the whole thing. We had I had just gotten back from Connecticut. As soon as I landed in Indy, rented a car and drove up, about 5 hours, and then I had a 5-hour drive home. So
totally get it.
I wanted to get out before the crowd did.
Yeah, totally understand that. Been there. Yeah. I've been there. That was, like I said, that night was crazy. Plus, like, J-Bone, you could speak to it, dude. The biggest thing with that, you talked about how you were sparring with Skylar, man. Like, the size difference was the craziest thing to me during that whole week when we were doing the press conference and everything. Because when we went to the open workout and I saw him like right after the other hitting mitts, I'm like, holy shit. Like, Claressa's usually bigger than most of her opponents, and she came up to like here on the girl, and then like for them to bang it out like that for 10 rounds. And for anybody that didn't get to check it out, we talked to Claressa after the fight was over, and she said, like, she even said it herself, she goes, Danielle, I knew she was tough, but she gave me a lot more than what I was expecting. And she talked about exactly what you talked about earlier, in that the energy of that crowd was what kind of like almost gave her that second wind of sorts, and like wanting to put on because it was here in the city and all that stuff. But like I said, it's just cool to see women being on that platform too, because that was something I feel like you never used to see.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, it's just been amazing. I remember early, nobody wanted women on the card. I remember Dana White, women will never fight in the UFC. And then you're really short-sighted when you start watching. They can display just as much heart, and plus a lot of times, like I said, they're attractive, so that helps too. So it's like, man, it's just sometimes they got the complete package. They got everything we want. It's like sometimes, especially I know with BKFC, I felt like sometimes the females are the best fights on the card. So it's just like, man, you have to put them on there.
I'll tell you what, in the short time that me and you guys have done commentary together, that woman fight at that last commentary gig I called you guys, where we just got,
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I can't think of the young lady's name right now, but holy crap, dude, I've never seen somebody get hit so hard in the nose and something just explode all over us.
Anya Ghazi, that was who it was. You're talking about the chick in the
yes, Anya Ghazi. My phone had blood, my shirt had blood, Kyle's suit had blood on it.
Damn.
It was actually amazing, but we had
amazing.
We had to get up and clean up and go sanitize. It was something I've never even seen before.
I even forgot that part. That's the second time that's happened to one of my suits, because that happened at the last Muay Thai card.
Probably the fight of the night that night. It was amazing.
Damn right.
And I'm just thinking of when we had one of our female fight, Melanie Shaw got hit in the mouth in the last round by Britain Hart, and her tooth goes flying out.
I watched that
kept
fight.
Flying. I was like, damn. No quitting that.
Just kept going. All fight, man. It's crazy. You can't train shit like that. You know what I mean? You can't train having that dog in you. And I think that's why a lot of fighters are so special, guys. Like when I was growing up, I was a big Chris Lieben guy, And I didn't like him because of his skill, even though he kicked ass. I liked him because of the way he walked through punches. Thinking back now, I'm like, you dick. You know what I mean? Like, that guy took some punches, man. But it is what it is. That's that dog that we talk about.
Yeah.
After seeing how big of a turnout that was no offense to Flint at all, but it isn't one of the bigger cities necessarily in Michigan. After seeing such a big turnout and seeing such the fanfare and stuff that Michigan can bring to a fight night, what's the chances we're seeing BKFC coming to Detroit or anything like that anytime soon?
Oh, it's coming. It's coming soon. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but we've been doing a lot of talk. Something's coming to Michigan before too long. I guarantee. I don't know exactly where it'll be, but I will be there sometime this year, I would imagine.
I can't wait. I'm glad to hear that, because we had Greg Bloom, the CEO of BYB Extreme, came on, and he said the same thing. He said Detroit's a hotbed that they want to bring bare knuckle to. So all I know is whenever y'all get here, I got to be in the building for that. Well, with that said, man, and you coming off of Knucklemania, you guys got BKFC Newcastle this weekend, man. Talk to me about that fight. What are some of the fights that you're looking to check out? Obviously, we've got the Cruiserweight championship fight with Thompson and Boardman, but what fights are you looking forward to on that one?
I really like the guy lost his last fight, Lewis King. I thought he'd been looking phenomenal until he was doing great in that fight. He just got caught with a right hand, put him down, and that's all it takes in this sport. I know he's got a good one. I know, and we have Jardine, not Jardine. People keep calling him Jardine.
I thought it was Jardine too.
Everybody does. It's spelt like it, but it's Jardine.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, I like watching him. I think that's going to be a good one. Like I said, unfortunately, there's still some of the guys there I don't know quite as well. But the guys I do know, I'm like, okay, like they're doing a good job now of putting good, like, undefeated fighters against each other, guys with like 3-1 records. So I'm starting to know these guys a little bit more. I'm like, man, this is a good fight. This is exactly what they need to do. So I think early they were just, trying to get people some wins and get them a record. Now they're putting those people together. Ooh, this is what we've been waiting for. So there's going to be some good fights.
Yeah,
I agree. Well, with that said, with BKFC and you coming off Knucklemania and all that stuff, man, what do you think? What do you see next in the horizon for BKFC, man? You've been kind of on the ride now for quite a while. Like, what do you think's next after we see all this? Because obviously I keep hearing $25 million tournament that he's talking about. You got Conor McGregor's involved now. You got all that kind of stuff, man. What's next for BKFC?
I mean, a lot of global expansion. I know we're supposed to be going to Dubai here and then over to Italy. I think we went to Spain. That was unreal. I mean, they loved us. I think we're having a lot of growth globally, and I think this $25 million tournament is gonna really turn a lot of heads. I think we're gonna get a lot of people paying attention to what we're doing. All we need is eyeballs on the sport. If people see it, they love it. It's just a matter of getting them seen. So once people see it, like, I want to watch that again. That was entertaining. That was fast paced. That was fun. A lot of knockouts. I mean, think about it, man. MMA people have gotten so good on the ground now. It's hard to get a good submission. What do you get? A rear naked choke? Maybe. I mean, so a lot of times people get taken down. It's a little safety thing. You try and advance position, land a couple punches. But the best fights are the stand-up wars, in my opinion. So that's what a lot of people want to see. So what's all we do? That's all we do in bare knuckle stand-up wars. So why watch that when they wear gloves and they might go to the ground here? When I always feel like a lot of like UFC fight, you might watch it and let's say they have 8 or 10 fights on the card. There might be 3 really good ones. Bare knuckle, you might have 7 really good. You might have. It might be. It's like flip flop. I feel like. I mean, like I said, the last one we had 12 good ones. That was a rarity. But we're always going to get a lot of entertaining fights in bare knuckle. I don't think anybody else in the world can match that.
Yeah, you brought up the pace too. The pace is really hard for other organizations to match, especially at like a TV and commercial level. I mean, what you guys are able to do with being able to really pump those fights while still fitting in all your sponsor drops and still keeping, the fans informed about the athletes and stuff. It's like you guys do just enough in all those categories to be able to check all the boxes while being able to keep that action moving. It's the pace is wild.
I agree. They've done a great job of making this product. They know what they wanted. They wanted fast pace. They want a lot of fights. They want to give the fans their money's worth and make people say what I am. This is amazing. You know, this takes all the aspects of, you know, other combative sports that aren't that fun, and you got rid of them. You know, it's just like, oh, you don't like that, get rid of it. You don't like that, get rid of it. Let's just give them the fun stuff. And that's what they've done. And I mean, even starting 3 feet apart, boom, we're not going to have you walk around. You're starting, you're going to punch the guy immediately. I mean, toe the line. Like I said, everything they've done has been about entertainment. You know, the clinch, you know, all that. You can fight from the clinch. You can knock people out. You can, everything they've tried to do is to make it more fan friendly, and it's worked.
Yeah.
It's going to grow. It's going to continue to grow.
Well, talking about things that are fan friendly, you know, I couldn't let you get out of here without asking you, man. So, were you ever a wrestling guy at all? If so, who were some of the favorites? Because I was shocked to find out that Claressa Shields' opponent, Danielle Perkins, not only was a wrestling fan, but she goes, "I liked Ultimate Warrior and Razor Ramon." I wasn't expecting that one, so I gotta find out. Did you ever mess with pro wrestling at all?
It was an awful long time ago. I was little, man. I mean, I'm like back in like the Jimmy Super, you know, Junkyard Dog, Hulk Hogan type of back in in the 80s. But you know, once I started doing like real wrestling and getting involved more with boxing, all that type of stuff, I kind of stopped with the pro wrestling. So I'm an old school, like when I was younger, but it hadn't been since then.
Hell yeah, man. I had to ask, but dude, I appreciate the time. And for anybody that hasn't gotten the BKFC app, man, make sure you check out BKFC Newcastle this week. If you've got anything else that you'd like to throw out there, social medias or anything like that, man, the floor is yours.
I mean, only thing I can think of is if you want to hit me up, Chris Lights Out Lytle on Instagram or whatever. Yeah, I'll hit you back if you want to ask me a question.
Hell yeah, man. Well, we appreciate your time, dude. This is definitely one that I've wanted to do for a while. We definitely got to do this again, maybe after one of these BKFC cards, man.
Anytime, baby. I'd love to come back.
Hell yeah, man. We appreciate it. Well, for all of you guys that are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We got our link for the OPUS CLIP stuff, so all those clips that you guys watch on IG and all that stuff, we appreciate you guys. I just was doing the tally before we came on the show. We hit over 130,000 views on TikTok in the last 4 or 5 days for that Claressa Shields stuff. So we're definitely moving over there. You guys have been coming to the YouTube. Appreciate it. Make sure you guys are around because this Thursday, we're going to jump back to the wrestling side. But our guy Mega Ran is back because he also has come out with another theme song. He is the voice behind the New Day's new theme song. He's also the voice behind Shelton Benjamin's new song. We're going to check him out, talk about his time at the Grammys and more. So until next time, anything in between time, hit that subscribe button and check out BKFC. Peace.
Thanks, guys.